Hello and welcome to HPA-Global Insights, where we'll be interviewing experts from the dietary supplement, nutritional ingredient, and overall natural health food industry. Please like, subscribe, turn on that little notification bell, and comment below. Now on with the show. Hey, welcome to the show. Today we got an old friend, not that he's old, but he is an old friend, Kenn Israel. He's the founder of Innovation Nutrition Consulting and co-founder of Beyond Brands. How you doing, Kenn?
I'm doing really well, Jeff. Thank you.
So you join us from a very interesting place. We just touched on that quickly. You're out there in Tashkent in Uzbekistan. How's things? It's evening time for you.
It's evening here, and it's been a warm day. It hit about 42 today, which is a little north of 100 for our team in America. So it's been warm. It's been nice.
42. That's crazy.
Yeah.
What's before we jump into this, any fun facts about Uzbekistan or life there? What one thing can you?
Oh gosh, there's a lot of them, but what I'll say is that if I go to the end of my street to kind of the main boulevard, that main boulevard has been there for about 1,500 years and was part of the actual Silk Road. So if I had a time machine and went back there, I would have seen camels bearing silk from China on its way to Europe. So that's kind of cool. But now it's just a normal street with restaurants and cafes and stores and stuff.
That's crazy. I mean, that's something that, America is such a young country, when you compare it to other parts of the world, it's crazy. Very, very cool. So we're going to talk about some stuff today, supply chain and a little bit of, COVID influence on supply chain and COVID influence on products and moving forward, development of products and all that good stuff. But before we do that, let's get a little intro about what you're into at INC and Beyond Brands. Like, what are you guys up to?
Sure. Well, INC is it's been my company for a little over 6 years now, and it's kind of a boutique product development, to a lesser extent, regulatory affairs shop. I work with customers here I always say here in the States, but in the United States, which is 12,000 miles away, and also some clients in Eastern Europe. Beyond Brands is a much larger team. It is working in dietary supplements, food, beverage, healthy lifestyle, and we have a whole team of partners that work across different verticals and horizontals to provide comprehensive services to clients. So it's a big shop with a lot of different capabilities.
Well, very interesting. I see, and you've got some products there behind you that you're probably working on diligently and getting them into the stores and whatnot.
Oh yes, a lot of these are actually already out there. Some of them are client products from that are GNC and independent health retailers, and some of them are direct to consumer companies for now, like Mantra, the Rise and Rest behind me. But we're having a lot of fun and doing what I hope is really helpful and important work for people.
Very cool.
Yeah,
we just off topic. We were talking earlier before we started recording about supplements and the role they're playing with COVID and kind of the lack of information that's it came out and then it disappeared, and it came out for different supplements and things that could be helpful to not cure it by any means, but to be helpful. To be helpful in protecting you as a person and all that good stuff. But very cool. So let's jump into supply chain. Obviously, our focus, HPA China is China, of course. And China is, as most people know, is kind of the hub of where people get their ingredients for the dietary supplement industry. So let's talk a little bit about that, like how COVID has affected the supply chain.
Sure. Well, I think the old saying is that amateurs talk tactics and generals talk strategy, and strategy now is supply chain. It's getting material to the front and it's never been more challenging. China is absolutely the hub globally of bioactive production. So be it B vitamins, minerals, certainly botanicals and nutraceuticals, many roads, not all, but many roads do lead back to the ports of China. And we're experiencing some real extreme challenges in the industry at this time. And I'm going to say that these are turning into structural issues for the industry, be it B vitamins and some botanicals that have grown dramatically as a result of COVID. Some ingredients have fallen quite into favor. Things like vitamin D, vitamin C, vitamin K. Also many botanicals, mushroom extracts, certainly some of the berry extracts, elder, etc., echinacea. All of these have grown, and some of them have in fact grown beyond the biomass and beyond the ability of the suppliers to supply. This has created really big bottlenecks, and then there's been unexpected bottlenecks as well. Getting containers to China to put product into as trade slowed, that became an issue. Finding space on ships or the bellies of planes when travel slowed down, that slowed down quite significantly. It's also impacted other unexpected ingredients. Packaging components have been terrible. I have clients with lots of bottles and tops, but no liners, or no seals, or no printed material in boxes. So those have become big issues, and it's kind of remarkable watching the industry now pivot. And we'll probably talk about this a little later in the conversation, from the traditional, I want to say, incremental, periodic buying of materials to becoming much more strategic. And I think the bigger players are realizing that just-in-time inventory is probably going to go away. And we're going to need to be much more strategic about what we hold. And that has knock-on effects as well. I'll talk about some of that further down as well.
Yeah, so if we step back a little bit to the beginning of COVID, so it was actually I mean, obviously something like this is never a good time for something like this to pop up. But in terms of China, it was interesting. It happened in mainland China right around the main brunt of it was coming up to Chinese New Year. So
Yes.
most of the factories in China were closed anyways. So it was kind of an interesting timing that, the rest of the world was like, oh my goodness, what's happening? But China typically for that month, typically is factories are all shut down, workers go home, travel back home to see their families and whatnot. And so that was kind of interesting timing. But also coupled with that was, in terms of the US, we were right in the middle of ongoing US-China trade issues, which, also had some effect. And then when COVID actually went kind of pandemic, like you said, I think logistics globally were hit in terms of containers. And, I've talked to friends in other industries and they have the same, the containers are in short supply, the trips are in short supply, bellies of planes, as you mentioned, not as many planes flying around. That all kind of played into that supply chain issue.
Yeah, no, it was, I would say the one good thing about COVID was it started right at Chinese New Year, because typically people have hoarded up and massed up some supply for a little while, but no one ever could have imagined that we would close down. And I remember when we closed down in California, where I was living at the time, we were thinking, oh, we'll be closed for a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months. Yes. Nobody knew it was going to be months after months, let alone years. And now it looks like it's going to be protracted again. I think the wiser among us, we have significant threat from these new variants, Delta specifically now. Lambda is emerging. There's Delta Plus as well. So, we have our work to do. And the longer we don't take it seriously, the more runway we give the virus to play and change and shift. So, we got to eat the bitter now and eat it fast.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what it takes. I mean, unfortunately, the measures that China, if we just focus on China as a country, what they go through to combat this are very extreme and just would not play out well here in America. I mean, people, I mean, it's, you know, if someone pops up sick, I mean, they lock down city blocks. It's just done deal. And it is really the only way to deal with something like this. I mean, it has to be, like I said, eat the bitter. I mean, you gotta suffer for the short term. You know, that's one big thing people keep complaining about, is the economy, and you can't shut the economy down. Well, if we had shut it down for 3 months compared to, you know, 2 years, affecting it over, you know, time, you know, what are we looking at? But yeah, let's move on from that. I don't want to get to too much of a COVID thing.
You and I can go down rabbit holes.
Yeah, well, everyone can, you know, and they can go down different rabbit holes, and you know, so supply chain. So what, you know, like I said earlier, most people know China is the kind of hub to get these ingredients, and it is on the other side of the world. And there's other considerations. There's quality. So if you're just looking at yourself as a manufacturer of ingredients, you know, and we're looking at, like, we want to control quality. We want to control logistics. COVID has really shown us that something can really disrupt the global supply chain for not just our industry, but every industry. But so what do we do to kind of shrink that? What do we do to get more control over quality? So we've seen some instances of, you know, most recently, like Now Foods doing testing on products that are sold on Amazon. That's a whole other story we won't get into, but but it really is kind of a, you know, logistics, supply chain, quality issue. How do we shrink that? You know,
well, you're asking some interesting questions, and there's some knock-on trends that I think also influence the answer, in that the whole question of global sustainability, of equity and fairness globally, also have a seat at the table of figuring out what comes next. You know, because we need to be more sustainable. We can't have dietary supplements with supply chains that literally go around the world multiple times. Mm-hmm. And that's the reality right now. The carbon footprint of some of these things is, you know, it would not give us good bragging rights to our more sustainably minded consumers. So that said, relocalization of supply is something that a lot of folks are giving great thought and consideration to. It may not be as efficient. You know, we've, as an industry, really valued the most efficient production, the lowest possible price at a given quality level has been the driver of the industry for some time. And I think now we're actually beginning to see a shift in thinking. You know, some of the items I said I'd get back into. Folks are abandoning just-in-time supply. Well, that means they need to start investing in warehouses. Mm-hmm. The price of warehousing in near supplement production hubs has skyrocketed because everybody who's manufacturing anything is also thinking, God, I got to store more stuff near my plant. So that's been a challenge. Maybe producing near plant and some near point of use is something that we're going to really start engaging in a very thoughtful way moving forward. I mean, most people, even in the industry, have no idea how massive, for instance, a B12 production facility is, or a folate production or biotin production facility actually is. I mean, you know, you've been to them in China. We don't have them located here in the States. So changing some of the production processes or chunking it out and having semi-finished goods near site of use is definitely in play at this time. And folks are investing in that, in changing supply chain to better serve them, to make it more resilient. The other thing that we're doing within the industry, I see a lot of my clients putting much more effort into qualifying multiple supply sources. So it used to be, okay, I got my shop in China, I'm in good shape, I have a supply on this. Now it's like, well, let's look at something in Europe and maybe something in India, and gosh, you know, maybe we'll produce some stuff back in North America again. So that's also becoming a reality of more resilient, multi-noded supply chains.
Yeah, and you know, like you mentioned, you know, China, well, we mentioned China being the key one there, and that's, I think over the years they've really cornered a lot of ingredients, and just no one else makes them. I mean, back in the day, there was productions in Europe and America, and all that stuff's been shut down. It just, China has just really cornered the market on many of the ingredients. And you know, Chinese medicine, I mean, there's just a huge, I think, untapped, some of it's been tapped, but a lot of it is untapped in terms of botanicals coming out of China, you know, and creating products using those type of things. So we've seen, as you mentioned earlier, like mushrooms and some other products that are, you know, kind of key in on immune system, which we can even talk about coming up next year.
Oh,
But
there's lots of brilliant plans from China. But what amazes me, I mean, and to this point, is that India didn't have a bigger play in dietary supplement actives, because if you actually look at where a lot of the rock star herbs have come from for the last decade, it's not China, and it's not North America, and it's not Europe, it's India. You know, all the turmerics and ashwagandhas and, you know, copa and boswellia, these are Indian rock stars. So, you know, and certainly in pharmaceutical APIs, they have their chops, they know what they're doing, they can manage quality effectively. So I think this is beginning to turn into one of those other nodes that will be developed in the supply chain.
Definitely. Well, that's, I mean, when we were talking about, not you and I, but just in general, industry friends, we were talking about like Supply Side West and different shows coming up, and which ones are going to be viable and which ones are going to be virtual and all that. And the two major countries we talked about in terms of who can come, you know, China and India are two of the biggest players, you know, in terms of, you know, where you're getting these ingredients. And oddly enough, both of them have very substantial native or traditional medicine, with Ayurvedic medicine and traditional Chinese medicine, both having you know, all these, like you said, rock star kind of botanicals that have been used as medicine over the years. And I think, you know, when you go to China, I'm not too sure about India, but when you go to China, a lot of these botanicals are sold as medicine in China, and they're registered as medicine. But if you bring them here and you know, don't tout that medicine and end of it, and you just present it as a botanical, it can be sold as a supplement.
Yes.
So that's an interesting.
Often out of context, unfortunately. But yes.
All right. So let's kind of jump on this third part here, and you know, what is COVID done to product launches and new products, and you know, what are we looking at?
Well, I think there's been, you know, some obvious, some slightly less than obvious, and some emerging implications of COVID. I mean, the obvious is immune. Immune took off like crazy last year, probably 40 to 50% growth. A massive, and where the growth was happening was also kind of interesting. And there was this massive, I almost want to say 10-year acceleration in 1 year of online and direct to consumer. So who was selling and where they were selling changed. Innovation definitely shifted to the DTC space. Those companies really advanced rapidly. Immune was rapidly followed by stress and sleep products. And while immune will likely retrench, maybe as much as 10% this year, stress and sleep are going to continue to grow at a robust pace. We're also seeing active nutrition now as people started to emerge, and COVID-19 for a lot of people meant they gained 19 pounds or more from sitting in Zoom meetings all day. Active nutrition has really also shown some big signs of life. And this is not unpredicted. I mean, the emergence of plant-based proteins and the proliferation of pre-workouts has really done well. And then, you know, you look at some of the big CPGs leaning in on hydration, the sales of Noon and Liquid IV. this is a fast moving, high expectation area. So I think this is going to prove most interesting. So, you know, those are some of the big trend lines I'm looking at as a direct result of COVID. There's other trends that were working in the industry for quite some time that have been affected by COVID as well. I think the probiotic space and microbiome and biome-driven wellness is real important. There's been an absolute confirmation in the scientific literature that if your biome is healthy, you're probably going to survive COVID. And if your biome's not healthy, you're going to have some serious challenges. Even if you're not currently suffering from comorbidities, it's going to give you a predisposition for challenge. And again, we cycle back to China. China has some amazing technology that hasn't played yet in the US. So this is going to prove most interesting over the next 3 years, I think.
Yeah, I was talking to Dr. Harris about omega-3, and they also did some research with, they have access to samples of people that are actively ill with COVID, and looking at blood and looking at omega-3 levels, and finding in the initial studies that people with the omega-3 index, with high levels of omega-3 in the blood, the anti-inflammatory and the all the other aspects of it were very beneficial.
Yeah, I would put health of your microbiome, omega-3 status, vitamin D and vitamin K. Those are things that people can take care of preemptively and really shift the odds in their favor, like in a massive way. So, and those are all easily checked and addressable. So certainly things to
definitely. Yeah, it's and like you mentioned, stress, I would imagine. I mean, immune was the first symptom, oh, we got to boost our immune system. That was the obvious one. But then as this drags on, you mentioned earlier, oh, we'll be shut down for a couple of weeks, or maybe, that 2 weeks turned into 2 months, then 6 months, and it just multiplied very quickly. So now we're in that stage of, this sucks. I mean, it does. I mean, it just, and everyone has their own COVID stories, and people have been affected differently. I mean, in my circle, there's been a death. There's been people that have had it and didn't even know they had it. So it's all over the place. So stress, anxiety, depression, these things are huge. Especially, I have a 10-year-old son, but I can't imagine having a high school student during this. I mean, keeping them away from their girlfriends
or a college
boyfriends.
Student, which I have, a 22-year-old young man who wants to go out and experience the world.
Yeah, well,
the world's canceled for now, dude.
Yeah,
stay home, play Xbox.
Yeah, that's hard, and that's going to be stressful and very depressing for them. So
and the mental health implications of this are massive, and the health implications on children, both psychologically and physiologically. Staring at a screen, going to Zoom school is really bad for kids' eyes and their brains, and disrupts sleep and disrupts behavior, etc. So there's, and these are creating markets that our industry is incredibly well positioned to address. I mean, there's no other industry besides optics, building blue light filtering glasses, which I wear all the time, that will save the eyes. We need carotenoids. We need nutrients to help calm the brain and calm the excitability that this video medium causes for all of us. The other big area that I'm looking at also is post-COVID and long haulers, and how we're going to help folks with long COVID and lasting symptoms, be they cardiac and respiratory or neurological. Those are real issues that folks are facing every day.
Yep, definitely. All right, well, let's wrap it up. We're approaching a half-hour mark. We want to keep these kind of tight.
Sure.
There's so much information in these things that we could go down those different types of rabbit holes. But Kenn, thanks so much for all your insights, as always.
Truly a pleasure. I always enjoy our chances to chat.
Yeah, and unfortunately, usually when we do see each other face to face, is always at Expo West or Supply Side, or one of these shows that have all been virtual for the last couple of years. And
yeah, and maybe again, who knows?
Yeah, I hope not. I just, hopefully next year we'll be getting back to somewhat of a normal world, but I
It'll
think
be a
it's,
different normal. There's no going
yeah,
back to what it was. And, the old saying, the man can only swim in the same river once.
yep, exactly.
Man's different and the river's different.
But out of this, I think one thing we could retouch base on maybe in the months to come, which is super interesting, is supply chain, and just watching how this effect and innovation, pushes the industry to create new ways of, sourcing locally, finding, I don't want to buy my supplements or my ingredients from overseas, or, in some cases you have no choice, obviously, but in some cases,
Food was disrupted. Food went
mm,
from, global farms to farm to table and farm to fork. So I see, localization as the next step. We'll see what happens. It's going to be exciting.
yeah, well, I was just out yesterday cruising on my motorcycle through the hill country of
Nice.
Austin, and I saw multiple farms with huge signs out front. These cattle are farm to table, grass fed, free range. And they were there. I was, they were these in that area. There's not even fences. The cattle can just walk wherever they want, and there's signs
Great.
warning you there's free roaming livestock. I turned down a street and there's a huge sign, and there was longhorn cattle just walking in the road, like, "Hey,
Nice.
what's up, guy?" And they just look at me, and I'm driving by. I'm like, okay, some cattle
Yeah,
cruising around, and they're just free to walk anywhere they want and eat whatever they want. It's
that's
pretty
cool. That's
interesting.
great, as it should be.
Yeah. All right, Ken. Well, good evening to you there in Uzbekistan.
And have a great day, Jeff, and we'll be talking again soon.
You too. Okay. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Ciao.
Thank you for tuning in to HPA Global Insights. Please like, subscribe, and share with your colleagues. Any questions or suggestions, email us at info@uschinahpa.org. This channel is operated by US China Health Products Association, which is a nonprofit organization. Please consider joining the association and supporting its global endeavors. Your support is very much appreciated. Until next time, take care.